This latest expansion rumor has UNC to the SEC and Florida State to the Big Ten, and it is, how you say, stupid. Welcome to Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast. That's Cameron Stewart of Locked On Baylor, the #1 Baylor podcast. Why is he here? Because he's pretty funny sometimes. We're going to open up with expansion rumors that are kind of crazy, and some people aren't that smart, and I can prove to you why. It's fun to make fun of other people sometimes in a nice, jestful way. Jestful? That's a word. Houston, they belong in the Big 12. Some people are like, I don't know about it. You know, football turns the lights on, and football's not very good. We'll get there. And Big 12 women's basketball just got way hotter. BYU hires its new head coach. Arizona State does the same. Molly Miller comes into the conference. This league just became elite. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Cameron, I'm scrolling through the old Twitterverse the other day, and I see a Twitter handle that's Genetics56. And you know that guy's got to know a thing or two about breaking expansion news when you're Genetics56. The name of the channel is Big Ten Information and College Football Fan. And has a ton of followers, too, for bringing up realignment and expansion news, which helped some channels get massive over the last couple of years. Others of us talk about real sports. Well, he tweets out this video from the Big Mountain podcast already. Like I'm just naming.
I'm sorry. Genetics56 is alerting you to the Big Mountains podcast.
Yes, correct.
I like where this is going. Okay.
And it's 24 minutes of two very seemingly nice guys. These guys seem like I would want to hang out with them, possibly share an ice cold Miller Lite.
I did notice like they have a studio.
Yeah, and they seem
like
cool.
It might be just the side of a room, but it is a studio. So
for sure, two microphones dramatically far from their face,
sitting right next to each other.
It's the Big Mountain podcast,
not looking at each other.
It's a couple move. They have their Venmo tagged in there, which not a bad idea.
Gotta respect that. I'm starting to do that on Locked On Baylor. So
I could do that. Yep. And they are discussing, which I think is wild. Some of the quotes that I sent you from this when I shared it to you, the idea of where expansion's going in college football. And they talk about how the Big Ten really wants a Florida school, Florida State, and they want possibly a scheduling partner, maybe like USF. You know, why not bring USF? And they believe
we don't want you here. We don't want you in the conference, but we'd love to play you.
And just like they've also mentioned, USF joining the Big Ten within a few years, and they make the case for Florida State to the Big Ten, and that UNC, that they almost give it's this foregone conclusion that UNC is going to the SEC, and ultimately, if UNC and Florida State are gone, so is Clemson, and I think that conference implodes, or they have to themselves add USF. I don't know, man. Like and every time someone is on like a podcast or they tweet something like, "Oh, my sources, my sourcing," I'm hearing from an athletic department or an athletic director or somebody in an athletic department that it's a foregone conclusion. Florida State, the big, and maybe the biggest thing that I want to start with here out of this whole deal is they mentioned Florida State can pick who they want to go to. No, you don't think the SEC is like, oh, hope they choose us. Hope they get to the podium and grab the hat.
Hats there, yeah.
Great hats out of them. Stephen A. Smith going to go on Wake Up or whatever the hell they call that show, and he's going to commit to the Florida State to the SEC, Florida State to oil companies in wherever.
Kind of.
I just don't think and this is a bit of a soapbox rant, because can I be honest with you? Even when I hosted Locked On Baylor, which is when a lot of this Pac-12 stuff went down, I mentioned realignment a ton, and I've talked about it a bit on this show. I've never broken news. I don't have a source. I don't want a source. So, can I really get deep here?
Yes.
My father.
The thrill.
Kidding. The text I got 2 weeks ago from another host of Locked On or the Locked On Podcast Network said, I have a source. I have inside information. A Big 12 team will be going to the Big 10. I just didn't respond. You don't. That's stupid. It's not going to. I don't have, I'm going to open my show. Sources. Maybe I will in a few weeks if content dies down. But sources, the Big 12 conference is losing someone to the Big 10. I don't break news. I just enjoy either finding a way to deduce whether or not news is real or outright making fun of people. And I think it's which is so nice. I think it's very stupid, the idea that UNC is going to the SEC and Florida State has its pick of the pack, whatever they want to do.
Florida State. I mean, honestly, if Florida State could just make more money in the ACC, I think they would rather do that. From the Big Ten standpoint, and actually, let's not move away from Florida State just yet, because one thing that does keep coming up is like Florida State does have a huge fan base, a huge alumni base, and all that. But like, there is a big difference between them and what Oklahoma and Texas were walking into when they were being, kind of wooed by the SEC. Because Florida State sucks again in football, right? Like, they had the good year and now they're awful again. They bottomed out again. And they're not good at basketball anymore either. And Leonard Hamilton's leaving, so maybe it's a new era. But like competition wise, Florida State should be in no position to just be picking and choosing where they're going to go. They should not be holding an auction here for Florida State. And on the Big Ten side, what I do find interesting about this, going back to the Texas-Oklahoma point, like the SEC knew what they were doing getting those two teams. It didn't like greatly expand their market, right? They had a market in Texas, in A&M, with a huge alumni base and huge donors. UT is obviously huge as well, but it's not like they were breaking new ground by going there, but they added two historically great football programs that also compete in basketball and baseball for whatever that's worth for people. The Big Ten has never cared about that, man. They do not care. They saw that, Maryland every 5 or 6 years might have been good at football, but hasn't been in the last 15 or 20 years. They don't care. They say Washington, D.C. They say they see that Rutgers was relevant in football 120 years ago, and they say, we don't care. New York City. So in that sense, it probably does make more sense of like, we don't have Florida. We can get Florida here. We can do that. SEC's already got it. The SEC is not, I don't think, clamoring to get Florida State the same way that Florida State is probably clamoring to get to the SEC.
North Carolina to the SEC? Are we in foregone conclusion the way it's been made to sound? It can't be, right?
Yeah, I don't really see it. I mean, I guess by that argument I just laid out, like the SEC would be more likely to get someone like North Carolina than Florida State, right? You add a team in North Carolina, even though you had the Carolinas a bit already with South Carolina. They bring you okay football, usually pretty good basketball, but it's not, I don't think it's breaking the bank. I mean, if I'm the SEC, I'm probably just standing pat, but that's just me being boring. But I don't see like the great benefit of the SEC or the Big Ten getting North Carolina. It's just, if you're going to pick anybody in the ACC, they would be high up on the list.
Michael Jordan, he's around.
I remember him.
But I don't know if that's going to be, we have Michael Jordan.
The actor?
Yes, Michael B. He loves UNC.
What was the name of that guy from Billy Madison? And he's like, Jeff Epstein, the financier? Like that guy?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say that on the podcast? I don't know.
Yes, you can reference the Conan O'Brien special.
That's it. I knew it wasn't Rogan.
Yep, Conan O'Brien. So we should be good there with Conan. Coming up, Houston. They belong in the Big 12, or they don't. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Supply House. I just bought my first house, and as a first-time home buyer, I need a lot of stuff like flooring and jazz, and the HVAC and the electrical work and the plumbing all need stuff, and Supply House is the best way for reliable products to come to your house on time. Easy to use website, an inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands. Find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. And for the extra edge, become a trade pro. Their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies. Use code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Visit supplyhouse.com and do it today. Cameron Stewart of Locked On Baylor. Because your university was saved by Ann Richards in the 90s, you get to be a part of this conversation. And I don't want to bring in Parker Ainsworth because of his red-colored goggles. Instead, it's going to be somebody who's been in the Big 12 for a long time. When Houston and UCF were first brought to this conference, a reporter from Baylor came on the show and said, neither of those schools deserve to be in the Big 12. This is overall a loss for the league. Now that Houston's in the Final Four, which they also did in the AAC, by the way, they also represented that conference in 2021, losing to Baylor in the Final Four. Now that Houston's in the Final Four, the football success has not been there. Basketball has dominated the league, and without Houston, basketball will be a lot more chaotic. Who knows what about it? Like they've walked in and taken over our trap entirely. No one's been able to compete with them. Without that, the Big 12 is wide open in basketball. Maybe get a couple more teams in because the league looks deeper. When a team goes 19-1, that's tough on pretty much everybody. Is Houston overall a great asset for the Big 12? Do they deserve to be in this league?
Let me add to that last point first before answering the question here, because I find this very interesting. Those of us who have watched Big 12 basketball for a long time, like the quality of Big 12 basketball has been pretty elite for like 10 or 11 years here. But when did you start hearing about it? Like 5-6 years ago. And then this year, you don't hear about it as much. You hear about the SEC. And I think there's no mistake in that, because 10 years ago, as good as the rest of the Big 12 was, who was winning it every year? The Kansas Jayhawks. Yes, thank you. And then in that 5-year stretch, it was not a foregone conclusion. Baylor was great. Kansas State tied them for the league title one year.
Texas Tech, national champion.
Texas Tech goes to the national championship game. Yes. And so there's all that. And now you're not hearing about it as much anymore because back-to-back years, the Houston Cougars have ran this thing into the ground in a good way for them, right? They've crushed everybody else, even though the Big 12 is still pretty damn good. The Houston Cougars have had a liftoff the last couple years. Is Houston bad for the Big 12? I wouldn't say it's.
Can I go here? Because it seems like you're still contemplating a bet.
A bit, yeah.
Houston belongs in the Big 12. If the question is posed to me, is Houston a good fit? Do they belong? Should they be there? The answer is yes. Region being literally regionality is a big part of this. That's where I was going. Having another Texas school added into this fold with the potential to grow and become a major piece of that market. Now the issue right now is, and bear with me here, Houston. Provo, they love BYU. It's like the one thing to do, right?
This is a big point. Yeah.
Go to Temple and love on BYU. In Lubbock, Texas, dear God in heaven, it is only Texas Tech. Like that's legitimately it. That and like 2 Allsups. And in Houston,
Holly.
People are going to see the Houston Symphony Orchestra more than they are, by and large, a Tuesday night Houston basketball game against Grambling State. You know, it's very tough to compete with a major city who relies on the Astros and the Texans much more than they do this university. And that it hurts you. It's hard. Boston College, which isn't necessarily in Boston, but it's like people are like, oh, well, yeah, they're in Boston, so we added them. It's great, right? Now we have the Boston market.
It's not.
Not really,
there is no
actually.
market.
So that's where Houston's great for the Big 12 because they have that name, Houston, a major, massive city, but it's still tough to derive Houston itself from that university because there are so many shows that are bigger in the town.
You son of a, took my entire damn point here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? So does Houston belong in the Big 12? They absolutely belong in the same conference as Baylor, Tech, and TCU. Yes. 100% they do. But in terms of that, that's where I think people get it misconstrued, is they think Houston, the same thing for SMU and Dallas, right? Yes. They just don't have the name right there. I mean, try as they might to put it all over their uniforms.
And I'd rather have TCU in Fort Worth than I would SMU in Dallas.
Yes.
Certainly no one wants to go to SMU games.
Right. And so it's not, you're not adding this major market. Like for all intents and purposes, you had the Houston market for the Big 12. And I think you already have Dallas as well. I mean, that's basically the headquarters of
Tech
it.
grads, Baylor grads, yeah.
Correct. Those are in Houston as well. They're not all UH people. And obviously A&M was a huge spot for it before they left for the SEC. So trust me, as someone who did grow up in Boston, like there is no market for college football and college basketball. Just because you add a team like that does not mean you're getting that. And so that's not a slight on Houston. It's a pro sports town, and it just is. And honestly, the last 10 years, maybe more than ever, with the rampant success of the Astros. So yes, they deserve to be in here, but it's not this major upgrade that I think a lot of people outside the Big 12 bubble think it is. It makes a bunch of sense to have Houston in there, but it doesn't add a ton. They're not very good at football. They don't have a huge fan base. They're not. It's not an intimidating place to play in football, and in basketball it is. But we'll see when they're just the third or fourth best team in the Big 12. And by the way, this is coming from someone who went to a school that's not very big, that isn't great in football every year, and does not have the best fan base in the Big 12 in terms of their attendance. And that's just how it is, but these teams deserve to be with each other. But I wouldn't say anyone is saying Houston is this giant upgrade to the Big 12. Just like in normal years, you wouldn't be saying that Baylor is a huge upgrade to the Big 12, but this is where they should be.
Yeah. And for
they
Houston
shouldn't be
fans,
playing UConn. Cincinnati, that's a different. Cincinnati shouldn't be in this conference.
For Houston fans that are upset by the conversation, I want to lean again on that point. The Baylor in every third year is not an upgrade for the conference, is not something that the conference leans.
At this point, TCU, the same thing.
Yes.
Without Gary Patterson there.
Colorado sans Deion Sanders would not have been an upgrade or a major piece for the Big 12. They were terrible in football for 15 consecutive years. So it's not as if Houston's being picked on. This same conversation could go for probably half of the Big 12 based on how they perform year over year in any given revenue sport. For Houston, I'll give you the solace of, if Ann Richards didn't exist, if Houston had been a part of when the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference said, let's do this thing together and go to 12, and the Cougars were a part of that, this is a much different conversation. Now we're talking about a school that is on par, quite possibly, with a Texas Tech, who's on par with Kansas State, who's on par with Iowa State. They weren't given that opportunity. They haven't been a power school for decades, and it will take time. You're fighting an uphill battle, because then you could have just merged with other universities that were on your level. But you and Rice got left out, and now Rice is completely irrelevant in college sports. I'd rather have Houston than Rice, but you're looking at a Houston school that just didn't get a fair shake. So we're not trying to bully. This is partially because of what happened 30 years ago.
Yeah, and the kind of irony there is that Baylor really benefited from being in the Big 12 all those years, even though they weren't very good for the first 15 years of it. But they really benefited from having that revenue back in the days where you built a program based off, okay, you get a good coach, you get some great facilities, and you get people invested, and that's how you win. That's what Baylor did. And of course, the great irony is they took their coach from Houston to finally be good at football. So, it's a different discussion in 2025 for sure.
I think so. BYU just hired a new women's basketball coach, as did Arizona State. The Big 12 is moving forward with a new era of women's basketball where it matters a lot, and I think you're going to like the conversation. That's next on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, I'm 24, man. I don't really know what I'm doing. The whole money thing, it's just kind of there, and then one day it's gone. And why is it gone? Well, I spent $40 trying to have food delivery to my hotel room of 6 Bang energy drinks. If you ever check your bank account and wonder where did it go, Monarch Money is here to be your own personal CFO. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's complete financial command. It's that center that helps you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much I was spending on just random stuff that didn't matter. So I stopped, because now it was very apparent to me. Instead of juggling multiple apps, use Monarch Money to track finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals with your partner. By the way, you can share these goals and stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year at Monarch Money.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
That is Cameron Stewart joining the show today. A brand new bombshell is at the Big 12. Molly Miller, who has won at every stop that she's gone, from Drury to Grand Canyon, and now Arizona State is about to revamp the game in the Big 12 as the new head coach of the Sun Devils. And then BYU hiring Lee Cummard. This is one that I really want to dive deep into. I know we don't talk a ton of women's basketball, but the Big 12 is as deep as I can almost ever remember it. It used to be 3 schools that were good: Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma. Now it's 6 or 7 that are vying for tournament games every year. Let's start with Molly Miller and Arizona State, but I do want to come back to BYU's hire, going with an assistant of the deposed head coach, which is always a weird optic, especially after the men's team hired the best NBA assistant out there. Okay. And Molly Miller was high on the list, it sounds like, for the BYUs and Arkansas of the world. Here she is at Arizona State, from Drury in Missouri to Arizona State. Molly Miller is a great new addition to the conference.
Unbelievable. Great to have her here. You said it. I mean, that was absolute bombshell news for sure. Like, that news is still really hot off the press, I would say. And honestly, I think they must have given her an attractive offer to come to Arizona State, because she would have had plenty of suitors, courting her in this last couple of weeks with the great things she did at Grand Canyon. But now here she is. I mean, more or less the cover girl for Arizona State women's basketball. I think it is a big addition to the conference. And also, you talked about it. It is deep and still wide open, this conference. 15 years ago, Baylor was great, and you also had some really good Oklahoma, A&M, UT teams, but they were all second to Baylor. Who's going to come in second, kind of thing. Now this is wide open for anyone to win any year, it seems like. There's no superpower. But certainly Molly Miller brings a lot of wandering eyes to women's basketball in the Big 12.
Yeah, she's going to elevate the conference. And a big piece of that could be her wonderful, loving husband and kids who will join her. She's going to, yep, they're all coming with her. It's going to be it's a full caravan.
This is news, huh?
Is that, am I breaking that to you? They are joining the Arizona State family. And look, this is the biggest piece of her being in the Big 12 is winning. When Kim Mulkey left Baylor, I thought the hottest move that Mack Rhoades could have made at the time would have been to go get the hottest young coach in college basketball. And that's someone who was winning at a championship level at Drury. And I can't, yeah, sure, you're talking a complete different level of collegiate basketball and trying to trust that person can find their way in the Big 12. But all she's done is win. All she will do is win. There are those coaches, Rick Pitino, from Providence to St. John's to Kentucky and Louisville. The guy just won, and she brings that same level of winning drive and factor. And so I think having Molly Miller in this conference is big. I wish Baylor would have hired her. They ended up going with Nikki Collin, who was a great selection, but Molly Miller probably could have given you more. And now she's in the Big 12. And I think you're the rest of the schools in the conference, you're probably looking at this going, man, we wish we had a coach like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we see a lot more in like men's basketball and football than we see in women's basketball. That kind of mentality that you're talking about there of getting the hot young coach who is rising up the ranks, and it's something that I think Baylor was just not ready to take the chance on at that point. They were saying we can get someone from the professional level and much like what BYU did with men's basketball. And that's going to be, even though that's a big risk as well, to bring someone into a major college program who hadn't coached college before, they thought that was a more calculated risk than the hot young coach, Molly Miller.
Yes.
And now they'll get to go head to head, which is great.
When you mention hot young coach, that was the story really for Kim Mulkey, which this is not too different for Kim Mulkey. coming from Louisiana Tech and then going to Baylor. And when she was hired by Baylor, it was, yeah, she's got it, right? This is a big move, but can she win at a higher level? And within a couple of seasons, she's knocking off national championship trophies, beating Michigan State and putting Baylor at the very forefront of women's basketball. And the Bears still carry that as a flagship of the university's athletic department today, with Nikki Cowan taking that torch. Oh, yeah, what you got?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, like the Kim Mulkey thing was interesting because she had coached a couple of years at Louisiana Tech. They had obviously known her as very successful as a player and assistant as well. And so there was, some debate as to whether she was a hot young coach, but she did have that it factor that you're talking about. That's, which can kind of put you over the top if you're like, I don't know if this is a hot young coach, but that kind of it factor would definitely put someone like that over the top.
Yeah, the BYU hire, I don't know, man. Like Lee Cummard is a legend there.
Oh, it's Cummard. Gotcha.
Yep. And what did you think it was?
Cummard.
Lee Cummard.
Cummard sounds more realistic.
Yeah, I don't guess I've heard it in
I thought it was kind of like that Utah dialect,
in spoken word yet. He in the write-up, BYU has hired Lee Cummard. It says he helped lead BYU to back-to-back postseason appearances, the WBIT and the WNIT. Man.
Which you just deemed wasn't good enough by the coach that hired him. It's so weird.
Right. So he's a BYU guy through and through. He's a legend. And hiring legends doesn't always work. Jimmy Dykes at Arkansas. They can really become a tough situation. Women's basketball is no stranger to this. And yeah, I know he's got a big name. He's been with the program on the men's side and the women's side as well. But you just, your deposed head coach that wasn't getting the job done, gone, is hiring their assistant better than that, especially when your basketball team on the men's side went and got the best assistant in the highest level of basketball. But on the women's side, you're like, well, it's getting kind of late in the hiring process. This guy is still over here. Hey, Lee, what do you say?
You haven't sold the house, right? That is it looks pretty bad optically when you have gone out and gotten an NBA guy as your men's coach and you're about to spend a couple $1 million to bring in the best recruit in all of high school basketball in the men's side. And then to just be like, yeah, sure. Cummard likes it here. Yeah. Let's just get, it's not a great look.
Who's a nice guy? Who's a great guy? Lee, man, we've been talking about it. Why don't we just, I don't know, give it to him.
By the way, this is just some intern who's walking into the AD's office. He's like, Lee is still around. Did you know that? He's actually he's down eating a bagel right there at the facility right now. I think he might be interested. We could get him to come on board.
Right. Man. And you could say, well, we don't want players to leave out of the portal. You kind of do. You were kind
Some
of bad.
Situations, yes, you do. Yeah,
it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to start over. And what's also crazy is this is a direct quote from the press release from BYU. Cummard suited up for the Cougars from 2005 to 2009, where he earned All-American status as a junior and senior. Half of the write-up isn't about him as a coach. It's about what he did as a basketball player on the men's team when he was there in the early 2000s. That isn't always a recipe for great success. It is typically a recipe, half the time a recipe for a legend, a guy who everybody's like, oh, I know the name. This is an All-American. He's great for our university. And then in 4 years, his legacy there is tainted.
Yeah, ask the Memphis fans.
Yeah, now, oh, shoot.
Ask the Georgetown fans.
Can we root for that guy? Because he's one of our native sons, but it just didn't work out. I don't want to look up 3 years from now and you ruined the name of a legend, or you put a black spot, a mar, on the name of a legend at BYU.
Man, Cliff Kingsbury used to not be able to buy a drink in Lubbock. I don't think that's the same.
Is he married yet, by the way?
I kind of hope not. I'm all in for the nuclear family, but I'm also for a dude making his money and not having to split it.
Crazy, man. That was a big thing at Tech. Why isn't this guy married? Good looker.
Live your life, man.
About hot young coaches.
Born to be alive.
For the first time in this segment, when we mention a hot young coach, we actually talk about their looks.
I don't like talking about their looks.
Cliff Kingsbury fits that
coaching ability.
Yeah, don't take your hat off. This has been It Always Will Be. at Real Cam Stewart on Twitter. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.